Okay, I'm going to show you the internal walls here. So we did some external wall example, which include the outer leaf and the inner leaf. And on the ground floor, we got some 2 and 5 walls. Obviously, they're the thicker walls and 100 millimeter blockwork walls. And then up on the first floor, we got 2 and 5 walls. Now, the difference here is that the block walls on the first floor have got different variable heights because this particular roof's pitches down from an apex in the middle here down to the edges going this direction, I guess from grid line B to C and B to A. So we need to just bear that in mind when we're measuring the first floor wall areas that they have variable heights. Also on the first floor, we got a metal stud. Now, I'm going to leave that for you guys to do yourself. I'm going to show you examples of the easier ones, and that is the ground floor, because these are all the same height. I will show you have a way of how to manipulate the heights. Um, for example, if you're doing the first floor, you'll be able to adjust the different heights depending on what wall you're adjusting, and that's quite easy once you know how. Just bear in mind that some of the walls are fair faced finish on the inside face of the warehouse walls here. These internal walls here is a fair face finish, and then on the I guess on the other side it's non-fair face because there eventually will be plastered. So just bear that in mind. There is a bit of complication. There's different types of walls, different heights, and different thicknesses, as well as different finishes. So looking at the, I suppose, the assignment, the first item I have to measure is 2 and 5 solid block wall on the ground floor, and then I've got 2 and 5 solid block fair faced on the ground floor. So just switching back to my software. Now, it's probably a good idea at this stage maybe to just take a look at my drawings, navigate to one of the sections, possibly section 2 here, and have a look at what's going on here. So um, we would have already measured the walls here as part of the substructure, the rising walls up to ground floor level. So we're not measuring down to foundations. We've already taken account of that, excuse me, in the substructure. What we're concerned with here is from ground floor level up to, I guess, to the underside of this slab here. Okay, and we generally only have internal walls. I think we only have internal walls in that kind of core area that's over in the, I guess, the bottom right hand corner of the drawings. Um, and I guess the height from floor to ceiling is 2.4, and from floor to floor above is 2.7. And we were utilizing that when we were measuring the height of our external walls. But the height of our internal walls will go from here, and depending, I guess, we'll go up to the underside, even though it's not really shown there. It might be shown in the other section if we take a quick look at that, exactly the underside or what the distance of the underside is. And we can see it there. 2.475 will bring us right up to the underside of, I guess that first floor. So that should be our kind of default height in terms of the height of our internal walls. Now, I guess if you're looking at these walls here, because you got a ring beam or a band beam in certain areas, the wall won't necessarily touch the underside. It'll come up to the underside of the beam rather than the underside of the slab. So we got to, I suppose, bear that in mind. But I guess we're not going to overcomplicate things. I'm going to take the height rather than, I suppose, from there to there for those type of walls. I'll take it as a default height from here, 2.475 right up to the underside, and just slight over measure. There's a slight over measure. Okay, so let's go ahead on that. Make a mental note of what that default height should be, which is from floor to the underside of floor above, 2.475, and go back into my takeoff. Well, first of all, I have to click on my ground first floor plan, which is the walls I'm going to take off. And then I am going to copy down here my first internal wall. So it's that 2 and 5 solid block. So I guess the 2 and 5 solid block wall, that's not fair faced. And we'll get to that in a second. So I'm going to hit the plus here and I'm going to paste it in. It'll come in with the A or the B or whatever else you're measuring, but let's delete that. Change it to a linear measure and maybe give it a color. Add details. Well, all we're doing with the walls is adding a wall area because we're measuring it per meter and it'll show as a linear measure. The classification will be superstructure internal walls and partitions, and we're looking for meters squared. So the distance, I guess, or the default formula comes in there as distance by height, which is essentially what I'm looking for. The distance is what I'm measuring, multiplied by the height. Now I can type it in, distance and select it times height. And there we go. And once I put height in there, I'm already measuring the distance. It comes in here. Now I can put in my 2.475. Okay. Now, again, as I said, these might be slightly less given that there's a band beam or ring beam around some of these walls, and we'll go up to the other side of that. So you can take account for that if you want. I think it's 225 minus 4, 2.475. So we'll bring it down to 250, won't it? But 2.475 is probably okay. And I'm ready to measure here. Now, be conscious of what you're measuring. You're measuring the 2 and 5 block walls. I have everything else hidden. That's why there's a kind of a cross out through the eye. And I want to measure these walls. Now, as I said, these ones here, which are internal, of course, are 2 and 5 block, solid block, if you want to look at the section. But they're fair faced on the inside because those walls are fair faced in the warehouse area. So I've got these walls here. So 2 and 5. This is obviously a 2 and 5 wall from there to, let's stop here, double click, and then start right here because I don't want to double measure this corner and go to the end there. Now I want to make sure I'm on the right one. No, I'm on the wrong one. So it's, oh no, it's the ground floor. I'm on the correct one. So leave it at that. It's ground floor I'm measuring. Sorry, I thought I was measuring first floor walls there for a second. So that's that. 16.54, 6.68 meters. And what I might do with that now is duplicate it. Just say fair face maybe here, or FF if you want. 2 and 5 fair faced, solid block walls, ground floor. Change the color. All is the same. Start takeoff. And that is these walls. So I've already measured that wall to there, I believe, as part of the external wall. So I'll start right here at the corner. And I'll go up to this corner, double click, and then I go from this corner all the way over here and stop, say, here, because that was measured a part of the external wall. So that's my 2 and 5 fair face solid block wall, also 2.475 high. And then as part of the ground floor, I also have this 100 block wall. And so what I'm going to do is exact same thing again. I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to type in 100. It's not, I don't believe, it's not fair face. We can get rid of that. Oh, put a little thing there. So yeah, 100 solid block wall, ground floor. Want to change the color. That stays the same and start takeoff. So it's pretty straightforward on the ground floors. As I said, I'm giving you a little challenge with the first floors because it's a little bit different, but I will show you, just to give you a heads up on that, how that might work. Double click and then go from here to here. So you should be getting used to kind of measuring these things. I go from kind of line from one side to line from one side to the other. As you can see there, what I've done, this side, then this side. So I'm trying to not double measure those corners. Now, if you did overlap them, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. So there I've got everything marked up and measured. Nearly 8 meters of 100 block walls, nearly 13 meters of solid block fair face, and nearly 7 meters of non-fair face ground floor. Now, again, when you're measuring the first floor walls, you do the exact same thing. You'll measure them like you measured this, but you may have to adjust depending on height to different heights. Now, the way you do that is obviously you'd measure your walls, call it, let's say 2 and 5 fair faced. In this case, it'd be hollow block walls on the first floor, call it first floor, and then go into your little 3 dots and then go into detailed takeoff. So once you're in the detailed takeoff, you'll see your lines that you've measured. So once I'm in detailed takeoff, by clicking on them, they turn blue. And that I know that that's the one I've measured. So this one here. So if I needed to change the height of that from the default height to something different, 2.7 say, or 3.2, depending on it. Now again, where will I get these heights? Well, I'll have to extrapolate it from the first floor. So I might have to add 2 endpoints together and divide by 2 to get an average. If a wall is sloping from one high point down to a lower point, obviously I'd have to get the average height of that wall. Now I'm not doing that in this case, and you can see that what's changing there when I do is the overall area. So I'm going to change that back, 2.475. But that is how you would adjust. You might give it a default height. It could be anything. Just throw in 2.7 or whatever it is, and then go and individually change the heights based on what they need to be. And to do that, you'll obviously have to look at the sections. So I'm going to go back there, but for the purposes of showing you how to measure internal walls, which is quite similar, obviously, to measuring external walls, that's how you do it. Okay, so it's just a linear length. putting a primary output in as an area and assigning a default height, measuring the length, and it'll obviously calculate the total wall area given the fact that you've put a height in there. So go ahead and do the ground floor and then set up another 2 or 3 different items based on what we got going on here for the first floor items, and measure also, don't forget your in situ concrete band beam. And I think between what I've given you in terms of videos, you've got maybe 60% of it already done. It's up to you to push on then and apply what you've learned in these tutorials to the other items that I didn't address. So best of luck.